Hi, my name is Marc Charbonneau. I'm a strategic marketing and sales training expert. This series of videos is really around how to better understand, connect, and communicate with your customers. If you can do that, the right patients get treated with the right medications, and we make a positive difference in their lives. This particular video is about how to take your presentations to your customer to a whole other level. It's focused on how you use terms that resonate with them and how to leverage the power of patient stories. I've worked in the pharma industry for over 20 years. I've been a sales rep, a sales manager, and a brand manager. I have a lot of on-the-ground experience. I know what works in the real world and what does not. The idea behind these videos is to leverage this experience to provide you with practical tips and suggestions that you can use on your next call. Now, in my last video, what I talked about is how you determine the conscious and unconscious decision criteria of your customers in a given therapeutic area. You need to listen to the stories that they tell, watch how they behave, and when you ask a question, make sure the questions that you ask are centered around the reality that the customer sees in their day-to-day practice. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you identify and use language that's going to really resonate with your customer. Studies say that we retain only about 30% of what's told to us. If we use words, expressions, and language that really resonate with our customer, we can improve this significantly. I'm also going to talk about how you harness the power of patient stories to help your customers to better visualize the patients who will benefit the most from your medications, and perhaps equally importantly, if not more so, the patients who won't benefit from your medications. I want to make a point here. Every presentation you give to a customer is incredibly important. If we do our jobs well, we make a real difference in patients' lives. Let me give you an example. Now, this is a story that I shared with my team just to highlight the difference that they made out there, that they could make out there when they were doing their jobs. My sister married a man named Jim over 20 years ago, and I really liked Jim. And eventually they divorced, but even after that, my sister always maintained Jim had a really good heart, and he did everything he could to take care of her. Now, my sister and Jim are little people, and I don't know if you know anything about little people, but they suffer a laundry list of medical problems, not least of which are joint problems, which can cause them a lot of pain. Jim was no different, and by his mid-40s, his doctor had prescribed him a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, or NSAID. It wasn't too much longer that Jim passed away from an NSAID-related GI bleed. So anyway, there were other pain medications on the market at the time that were much less likely to cause GI bleeds, and you gotta bet that I wish that some pharma rep had convinced Jim's doctor to prescribe him one of those medications instead of what he was on. I don't know for sure if it would have made a difference, but I like to think that it would have. Now, I used the story because you can rhyme off statistics about patients treated and patient life years till the cows come home. There's nothing more powerful than the story. And the point I made to my team was, they make a difference out there. Anyway, helping our presentations to our customers to be more effective by using language that they can really understand, that resonates with them, and by using patient stories so that they can better see the patients who really benefit, that's a big step towards making that difference. All right, so how do you identify the words and the expressions that are really going to resonate with your customer so that you can use them on your next presentation? Now, the people watching this video are a very heterogeneous group. So rather than take the anticipation guide approach, what I suggest is conduct a buzz session with your colleagues to review the educational concepts. The constructivism of this approach should result in a positive outcome. Okay, so I had to Google educational jargon to get the words for whatever it was I just said back then, but my point is simply this. When we use jargon, we lose the attention of our customers very quickly. So, great exercise to do if you want to get a look at what you've been saying to your customers day to day. Sit down, and as close as possible, because no two presentations are the same, but as close as possible, write down what you say in a typical presentation to a customer. Sit back and look at the words, look at the expressions, look at the examples that you use. Are these words, expressions, examples that your customer sees and hears and experiences day to day? If they're not, take them out and try and replace them with words, expressions, and examples that your customer does see and experience every day. Now, if you have a customer with whom you've got a great relationship with, this could be a great exercise to do with them. But when you're done all this, practice it, take it out in the field, and try it out with your customers. I bet your customers are much more engaged in this presentation. Now let me take you back 2 minutes. Do you remember the statistic I mentioned, the point I was trying to make? If you don't, it's not a big surprise. Statistics are hard to remember. We're not good at that. Now, about the same time, I talked to you about a point I was trying to make with my team with a story about Jim. Do you remember what that point was? Stories are an ancient and powerful way that we share information. Stories have been used for millennia, long before the written word or Google were ever invented, to share lessons and ideas from generation to generation. If you want your customer to remember and really be able to visualize the patient will benefit the most from your medication, a patient story is a very powerful way to do it. I would also argue that it's equally important to use patient stories to talk to your customers about the patients who won't benefit from your medications. Let me give you an example that I shared with my sales team. Now, at the time we were promoting one of the new class of anticoagulants. My father takes warfarin, which is part of the old class. Father, not a big fan of warfarin because you have to go for regular blood tests. He's a really busy guy. He doesn't want to take the time. And you're very susceptible to bruising. And my dad would get these huge bruises because he's a very active person and he's always bumping into things. Now, the new class of anticoagulants, much fewer tests and much less of a probability to have the bruising problem. You'd think my father would be the ideal candidate. But, and it's a big but, the product wasn't recommended for patients with artificial heart valves, which my father has. Now you can see that that's a detail that would be easy for a healthcare professional to miss. So you want to bet that I want the pharma rep who's talking to the healthcare professional who's taking care of my father to be damn sure that not only is he talking about the patients who will benefit from the medication, but also the patients who won't. So how do you identify and integrate patient stories into your presentations with your customers? First, you need some stories. Now, when I was a sales manager, what I'd do with the members of my team is I'd often ask them to share stories that they'd heard about patients who'd benefited from our medications. It was a great opportunity to reinforce the difference that we made and at the same time underline how important it was that we do our job well. It was also a good chance to share stories. And if you really want to get some great stories in your therapeutic area, often your colleagues are your best resource. Now, in my last video, I also talked about the fact it's really worth asking the customers about their experiences with their patients. Or even if they have stories that they've heard from other clients or from other healthcare professionals about patients that are treated in your therapeutic area. It gives you great perspective on how your customer is viewing the therapeutic area, and if the story respects your indication, patient privacy, and the customer is okay with you sharing it, can be a great resource for explaining to other customers what patients would benefit the most and what patients wouldn't benefit from your medication. Now, once you start to develop that bank of stories, look at the general messages or the information that you want to pass in your presentations to your customer. Identify the stories that best support that, and also think about customers who have particular needs or interests or have a special perspective on the therapeutic area. Look to see if you have stories that can help give them information or help them to visualize the benefits to the patient. Once you've got that, integrate the stories into your presentation, practice it, and then go try it out in the field. Guarantee you that your customers will do a much better job remembering the information that you provide through patient stories than any statistic that you want to throw out in their office. In summary, in order to more effectively communicate with your customer, make sure you're talking about what's important to them, use the words that they use, describe the situations that they see, and leverage the power of patient stories. If you can do that, the customer is going to better understand and connect with the information that you provide to them. If you can do that, the patients who benefit the most from your medications are going to be helped. Now my time's up for today, but I'd love to hear what you think about the video. Please feel free to thumbs up, thumbs down, write a comment, subscribe, or contact me directly at marc@solutionsmrc.com. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch the video. Have an amazing day.